everyone. Welcome to COS Today. I'm Dale Parrish, host, along with Ken Kashuba, State Communications Coordinator for Indiana Convention of States. How you doing, Ken?
Doing pretty good, Dale. Thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. I tell you, we're having a little audio, still having a little audio problem with you. I guess it's me. I guess it's me.
We'll have to ask our guests because I think it's you.
It must be. Okay. I don't know. There always seems to be some technical problem. Very seldom, it seems anymore, do we have a program where there's absolutely no technical issue at all.
Do,
Uh,
do, you, do you do you have an extra room in your house where you can bring in like a technical engineer on Monday nights?
Not anymore. Not anymore. I'll tell
Yeah,
you.
we're gonna have to do something with that. I have to get you an AI technical engineer on board.
I guess you're right. I guess you're right. I think it would help. I do think it would help. Well, as usual, what we're trying to do here on COS today, we're trying to save the country with Convention of States. Saving the country with Convention of States. And I don't know about you, Ken, but I know I say this every time, but it just seems like every day I see more and more reasons for a Convention of States. And the national debt, I mean, that's how many times, I mean, that's a major pillar in our platform, folks, with Convention of
Well,
States
well, the funny
addressing.
the funny thing about that, Dale, is now the Democrats seem to want to be concerned with that and use it against us, although they've never been concerned about it before.
All
So
right, right, right.
yeah, you know.
Well, folks, we know, regardless of the party, Washington D.C. cannot solve this national debt issue. So
Both sides of the parties are responsible for sure.
yes, no doubt, no doubt. So it's going to take a constitutional amendment, and that's and we can do that through Convention of States, or we can certainly get that process started. So anyway, that's where we are on that. Uh, let's before we get going here, let's let our friend Maringo Mike tell everybody about how to like us and share us. Nope, that's not what I want to do. Here we go.
The program, please be sure and hit the like and subscribe buttons along with the notifications bell so you'll always know when we go live. We appreciate your support and hope you'll join us on our mission to use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Now, back to the program.
Yeah, well, Maringo's always got that down pat, doesn't he?
Yeah, I had a little echo on it, but it could be just the internet tonight.
What?
I said I had a little echo on it, but maybe it's just my end and the internet tonight. So apologize if people got a little echo from Marengo.
Oh, you think it could be your end, huh? I thought you thought it was
I didn't say
mine.
my end. I said the internet.
Oh, the internet. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, the thing that gets leaked and people are tapping into and we're getting scrutinized on.
Oh, all right.
Everybody
All right.
knows what you're doing. Yeah, let's get into that. We won't get into that tonight.
Well, we're going to do our new feature that we've introduced here on COS today, and this feature is called "Are You Serious?" And we introduced this last week and it contains a little video, and we'll talk about this just a little bit after we play this. But I hope you like it. This is another rendition of "Are You Serious?"
My name is Sophia Hunt, and I'm Turning Point USA's Club America chapter president at Westfield High School in Westfield, Indiana. At our local Rock the Block event last week, it's a back to school event, I was working with my Turning Point chapter, my secretary and treasurer, and we were talking to families about what Turning Point was, what it does within our school, and what we stand for, and handing out the cutest red, white, and blue bracelets. A little boy came up to our booth, and he tried to grab a bracelet, and I saw Mom come and drag him away. I then looked at her and I said, "Hey, are you okay?" She then immediately responded, "Why the F are you asking me if I'm okay?" I was flabbergasted. I then said, your son wanted a bracelet, here's a bracelet. And she slapped it out of my hand and started cursing at us, screaming at us, and calling people we support racist, homophobic, and disgusting, saying, quote unquote, you guys are supporting a piece of sh. And I said, I hope you have a better day. She then stormed off and was still yelling at us in front of parents and children, probably between the ages of 6 and 10. And the crazy part is that she admits it in her own video that she flipped out and that she was seeing red.
Like, I don't know why, I forget what she said exactly, because at that point I was seeing red and everything was out the fucking window at that point. And I turned around and I said, I don't like that you guys are supporting that piece of shit human, talking about Charlie Kirk.
And those were her words, not mine. And I can tell you this, I wasn't seeing red. I knew exactly what was happening and when it was happening. Then she took it online. She started posting videos calling me racist, homophobic, transphobic, and all these other crazy names. And she hopes this follows me into college and my future employment, and attacked my parents, and even said, yes, I am going to attack a child and I am going after a child.
Yes, I am going after a child who is the president of Turning Point and likes to post racist, homophobic, transphobic things on the internet.
She also accused me of taking photos of pictures of children in bathrooms, which is completely false. I'm 17 years old, and this is a grown woman who has continued making videos about me because she disagrees with my politics. But here is what she doesn't understand. This isn't going to hurt Turning Point at our school. Our chapter has over 200 amazing members, and this year we're bringing in state and local leaders, having real conversations and getting students involved in what's happening in Indiana across the country, because these are things that are affecting us on a day-to-day basis. You can agree with us, you can debate us, and you can disagree with us, but trying to publicly intimidate and humiliate teenagers isn't going to silence us, nor is it good activism. But Turning Point at Westfield is growing, and we are just getting started.
Wow. Did that come through our near end okay, Ken? Did that show?
It sure did, and it's local. It's that happened out of Westfield, Indiana.
Yeah.
My son lives in Westfield. My granddaughter and grandson live in Westfield, and if I have anything to do about it, the two of my grandchildren will be joining TPA at Westfield High School if it still exists by then.
Wow,
It's
that's
terrible.
really,
Just watching that clip makes my blood boil.
yeah. Well, folks, that's truly an example of Are You Serious? That 17-year-old young lady and being treated that way. That's just not right. That's just not right.
She really sets an example as to how she'd like to see kids grow up nowadays. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Good for her.
Potty
Good for
mouth
her.
and all.
All right. Okay, Ken, let's get into our first segment here, which we call the In Focus segment. And here we just we bring on some guests, and we each just talk a bit about what's caught our attention in the news, what's caught our interest. In other words, what has our focus in the news right now. So let me bring on, without further ado, let me bring on our guest this evening. And let's bring on a young man here, Ethan Savka. And how you doing, Ethan?
I'm good. Nice to be with you all.
Did I pronounce your last name right?
Yeah, that's right. Ethan Savka.
Savka?
Yeah, basically how it's spelled. Yeah.
Close enough. Ethan came out of our Leaders Launchpad program in Convention Estates. And he is currently, am I right, a student at Hillsdale College.
That's
Just
right, yeah.
a bit north of us here.
Yep.
And so glad to have you tonight, Ethan. Thank you for coming on. And
Absolutely.
our
Thanks for having me.
next guest this evening is Mr. Andrew Lusch. Am I saying it right, Andrew?
You got it.
I
Nailed
got
it.
Okay.
Dale's
Andrew-
2 for 2
Andrew-
tonight. That's unusual.
Andrew's one of our regional directors, and I think you're based out of California, aren't you, Andrew?
That's right.
Yeah. So busy guy and covers. How many states do you cover out of your region?
I got 6 states: California, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, and Washington.
Okay.
Well, you do have your hands full, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yep. The only thing I got 5 kids too. So if we get one more, I'll have 5 kids in 6 states. Or sorry, 6 kids in 6 states.
6 and 6. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing going on in any of those states. Nah, nothing going on there. Yeah. Calm. Speaking of nothing going on, our next guest is Mr. Brett Sterling. Brett is the COS State Director for Missouri. How you doing, Brett?
I'm doing great. You know, Dale, you always throw the first punch, and then when I retaliate, you act like I'm the bad guy. It's like I'm going to a WNBA game. I'm wearing the wrong kind of shirt in the stands.
Oh, folks, he's got the WNBA on his mind tonight.
Yeah, good point.
And I got a feeling he's going to be talking about that. As a matter of fact, Brett, why don't you start us off with, might as well get it out there, and you start us off with what's got your interest.
For the
Well,
record, Brett. For the record, Brett, we are going to bring a referee on this in focus section from now on.
Well, let me know how they identify.
Okay.
First. So yeah, big fan of the WNBA. So obviously, if you have or have not followed the WNBA, that there was a player that came into the league last year, number 1 draft pick, named Caitlin Clark. She was a graduate of the University of Iowa. Fantastic basketball player, set all types of scoring records, and she was the number 1 draft pick of the Indiana Fever. And so she's a nice person. She can be argued to be a role model. And immediately there were a massive influx in ticket sales, attendance grew. Even now, if you look at whenever the Fever come to play a road game, the attendance of that home crowd increases by 25 to 35%. It's pretty incredible, and she has continued to be a dominant player in the WNBA. But she has a problem. Actually, she has 2 problems. 1, she's white. 2, she's straight.
Yeah.
So a straight white female in WNBA is anathema. So she doesn't check any of the right boxes, and she's she's a Christian as well. So yeah, she has 3 big black marks against her right there. So
Three strikes.
3 strikes. And so, her coming into the league, they've gotten from going to, flying commercial to having chartered airplanes. Like I said, ticket sales have gone off the charts. But what has happened here recently is her teammate, Sophie Cunningham, which is a proud graduate right here, a Missouri girl.
Graduate of, I didn't know that.
She's from Missouri. Yes, she grew up on a farm in Missouri. And she graduated from the University of Missouri Columbia. And she was asked, what do you, basically, should boys play in girls sports? And she basically said, no, boys belong in boys sports, and, girls belong in girls sports. She has been given probably half a dozen opportunities to walk that back. And she's like, look, I said what I said. That's what I believe, and that's what's right. So whatever. So now that has gone to having the WNBA had a meeting a week or 2 ago to try to decide what the W in WNBA stood for. Apparently that's a mystery all of a sudden. So because what has prompted all that, in addition to Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark, is Outkick Sports owner Clay Travis has applied for a franchise to have a franchise set up in Nashville, WNBA franchise in Nashville, Tennessee, and it would consist all of male basketball players who identify as female. So, and it would be called the Nashville Balls. which, okay, I'm sure he means basketball. So, that's fine there.
We may edit that part out, Brent. Just so Brent.
That's okay. That's all right. But so that hasn't been very well received by the WNBA. The other thing that he has done, but he's just capitalizing. He's playing by their rules. These are the rules that they staked out. The other thing he's done is he challenged the Las Vegas Aces, which they won the WNBA title last year. And so the best women's basketball team on the face of the earth. And so he challenged the Las Vegas Aces to scrimmage a high school boys state championship basketball team of his choice in a scrimmage. And if the Las Vegas Aces won that game, if they were able to beat these high school boys, then he would pay the Las Vegas Aces $10 million. And as I understand, that's about a little over a third of the revenue that the Las Vegas Aces receive, both from the National Basketball Association and from their own franchise operations annually. So this is a substantial amount of money. Now, that was made about 3 weeks ago. No response so far from the Las Vegas Aces, oddly enough. And one of the backdrops of this, I think it was back in 2022, the U.S. women's soccer team, the Olympic soccer team, the best women's soccer players in America, they scrimmaged a boys under 15. So these were 7th and 8th graders, maybe some freshmen in high school, a U15 soccer team in Dallas, Texas, out of Texas. And they played them in a scrimmage. This was a legit scrimmage. And the women's soccer team did not sit their starters. They had their starters out there. And the U15 boys soccer team beat the women's Olympic soccer team, U.S. women's Olympic soccer team, 5-2. And it was not close. And so basically what the WNBA is painting themselves into a box to where they can do one of three things. They either say, okay, you're right, this is a total fraud, and we backtrack on the whole entire narrative that we've been advancing since the league's inception. 2, they allow male athletes to play in the WNBA, and they get absolutely destroyed. And there's no, I mean, some of these WNBA teams wouldn't be able to score in double digits, I don't think. Or they can just continue to try to ignore it and basically just expose themselves for just being just an absolute laughing stock. And oddly enough, the WNBA, the only reason why it exists is because they've always been solely subsidized by the National Basketball Association, by the men. And so it's they're really in a no-win situation. But I think it's great. Enes Kanter Freedom, who was an ex-NBA player, he is declared for the WNBA draft next year, as also as Royce White, who was a former NBA basketball player. And Enes Kanter Freedom went to the Indiana Fever Chicago Sky game last night, and he had a shirt that said the word woman, and then like the part of a speech was a noun, and then below that it said adult human female. And he got called out by one of the Chicago Sky players who, oddly enough, they were down in the game by like 6 points. And so I would think that they'd be concentrating a little bit more on maybe winning the basketball game rather than what somebody was wearing in the stands. But so anyway, she started yelling and approaching and looked like she was wanting to get in a confrontation with Enes Kanter Freedom, who's like 6'10", 6'11", and his arm is longer than what Cloud is tall. So anyway, Enes Kanter Freedom got thrown out of the game, and it was for basically defending women.
Yeah.
And so, Cloud is going to be really, really upset whenever she has to defend Enos Cantor Freedom next season in the WNBA basketball league. So,
Okay, we gotta move on here. But,
total lunacy.
it is. It's an amazing situation, and I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it, but it certainly got my attention too. So that was a good one. That's a good one. Ethan, what's on your mind, bud?
Well, I'll give a brief introduction of myself before I get started. I interned with Convention of States a couple of years ago, and in the time since, I've gone on to Hills studying politics. I'm on the pre-law track. I recently launched a publication called Emergency Docket. You can find it at emergencydocket.com. And it's a platform for young conservative pre-law and law students to write about law and to approach the law from a reliably conservative perspective. So one of the things that has my attention is an article that I wrote about a week or two ago that focused on Colorado and its current case in the upcoming Supreme Court term. The case is St. Mary's Parish v. Roy, and it's shaping up to be Colorado's 8th loss in 10 years, I believe. I believe they've lost 7 cases before the Supreme Court in the past 10 years, so dating back to roughly 2015, 2016. Most of those cases have been about religious freedom. So Colorado has very strict anti-discrimination laws, strict in the sense that they are very liberal, very progressive, and that they do not allow much wiggle room for religious organizations that have beliefs about the sanctity of marriage and the role of biological sex, as we were talking about earlier when it comes to the WNBA. And in this case, St. Mary's Parish operates a preschool, and Colorado operates a program, or offers a program, of not free tuition, but tuition aid and assistance to all preschool programs throughout the state in an effort to alleviate the cost of education. However, it requires, under its anti-discrimination law, that those preschools must adopt certain practices around gender identity and sexual orientation. Basically, cannot discriminate on those bases, even if you're Catholic, even if you believe that a gay couple, or someone who's in a gay relationship, someone who identifies as a transgender person or non-binary, should not teach your children in preschool. And that case before the Supreme Court, the state defends it as merely a neutral law of general applicability that does not target any particular religion, but just relies on basic equality and anti-discrimination principles, while the challengers, of course, rely on religious liberty, the idea that you do have religious rights under the Constitution, in fact, a very broad natural right to freely exercise your religion, which applies not only to individuals, but of course to the Catholic schools and institutions themselves. And the Roberts Court in recent years has decided many cases upholding that right and extending it in public education scenarios. So they have held in effect that you cannot single out religious institutions for disparate treatment. You can't say that these tuition funds will be available to all schools except religious schools. And what Colorado does through its anti-discrimination law is effectively that. It's saying, since you are a religious school and you follow your Catholic beliefs, you can't receive publicly available funds, a state benefit. So the state is in effect discriminating on the basis of religion. And the Supreme Court, I think it's safe to assume, is very much aligned with the challengers in this case, very much aligned with St. Mary's more so than Colorado. And Colorado is very much likely to lose the case. But this is just another example of a growing trend in religious liberty litigation that states will use as many loopholes as possible to get around protecting or observing protections for religious freedom. We see this in the Ten Commandments in schools case. We see this in the St. Isidore case. We see this in the Coach Kennedy case, where the coach knelt on the football field and just said a prayer, and the entire leftist activist groups just blew up and piled on him for it. The idea that Christianity has any place or role in public life is an anathema rather to leftist and progressive beliefs, and the Constitution simply does not prohibit the public role of Christianity that we've seen throughout our history and tradition in America. And I think the Roberts Court is certainly going to issue at least a narrow decision in favor of St. Mary's. It should, in my opinion, of course, author a broader one. And I think this case will be one to watch for the upcoming term.
Very good, very good. What was that? You said you published a letter or something, or a newsletter. What is it?
It's a website, a publication called Emergency Docket, and we cover court cases and issues of constitutional and statutory law, just different things. Like we covered flock cameras, we've covered Fauci pleading the Fifth Amendment.
What's the address? What's the address of the website?
Oh, it's emergencydocket.com.
Emergencydocket.com. Okay, everybody. I hope everybody got that. Okay. Ethan, thank you. Thank you. Andrew, what's on your mind, bud? You're muted.
Sorry about that. So, hey, quick, I want to go back to the Are You Serious segment because I think we should say, "Are you serious?" after that clip. Are you serious that a 17-year-old has more character, has more maturity, and more brains than an adult? But she seriously does. And it actually ties into what's on my mind because just a few days ago, Hassan Piker, who is a very popular personality on the left, he was mocking Charlie Kirk and mocking his death and was singing an anthem to Charlie Kirk, but mocking him. And so I just think what we're seeing right now, and it kind of ties back into that Are You Serious segment, that people have just lost their minds, and people they see evil as good and good as evil, and they make no bones about it. And Hassan Piker is one of those people. He makes no bones about the fact that he supports communism, that he supports Mao, that he supports the communist revolution, all of that stuff. And he wants to see it here in the United States. And I think, when evil people tell you the truth and when they tell you who they are, I think we ought to believe them. So when Hassan Piker is out there mocking Charlie Kirk, who did really nothing but get out there to just talk about the issues, talk about what people care about, talk about, the lack of morality that we see on these college campuses. And he was trying to turn the tide and get young people engaged, get young people thinking about higher principles like self-governance and like being a good father or being a good mother or being a good husband, being a good wife. When you see someone like Hassan Piker coming in and just stomping on the grave of Charlie Kirk, I think it's evil. It's pure evil. And I know he gets a lot of attention on social media. And I think it just is kind of a sign of what's happening in our times right now. There is real evil out there. There's a battle between good and evil. And my call is to everyone is you have to go face it boldly. Hassan Piker he's going to continue to rise in popularity only if we, people like us and people who are watching this, don't get out there and do good things to counter this. Now, I'm not saying do anything violent, of course. I'm saying get out there and spread truth. Get out there and spread, be salt and light. That's what I'm saying. So that's what's caught my attention. It's a shame that Charlie is being mocked. But you know what? He was certainly a person that drove the left mad. And this is just another clip of the left going mad.
I think you're right. I think, every day it just seems like there's more examples of this communism, Marxism, socialism, whatever you want to call it, just more examples of it. And like you said, these people are coming out and coming right out and saying these things, and they need to be challenged. They need to be confronted. There's no doubt about that. Ken, we're running short on time on this segment, but you want to briefly tell us what's on your mind real quick?
I'll give you a quick overview, quick rundown. Yeah, I'm going to be talking pretty much about the situation with our military and obviously Iran and everything that's gone on here. For the most part, everybody realizes Iran's economy has been shattered. Their military and just about everything else has been pretty much decimated. And it's pretty clear that that we've pretty much won that war. The purpose that was served to dismantle their nuclear capabilities and a lot of their weapons, that has been done. So we basically have won that area of it. The thing that I want to call to attention right now is the fact that there is the ammunition problem that we are seems to be facing at this point, and it's either a leak or propaganda that's being used. But 2,030 Patriot interceptor missiles are what we had prior to going into everything here, and we are, by the count at this point, between 759 to 828 of those Patriot interceptor missiles. The FAD missiles, 452, we're now down to 278. Half of our Tomahawks are gone. And for the first time since January 1983, our strategic oil reserve has fallen to under 300 million barrels. Now, this is either you know, when you listen to President Trump talk about this, you're not led to believe that we're you know, running low on ammunition. So that brings up the point: is it a leak or is it propaganda? The problem is Tehran has been counting every missile that we fire. That's something that they have done, so they know how many missiles we've shot. They obviously don't know what our reserves are, but they know how many missiles we've shot. So you know, there's a little bit of a game being played, and again, whether Trump is using it in a deceitful way to kind of mask things, whether it's propaganda or whether it's an actual leak that got out, I don't know. But we should be concerned right now with our ammunition capabilities and what we're able to produce. He claims obviously that we can replenish this very, very quickly. Pete Hegseth has probably said the same thing in those areas. Of course, they don't want to alarm the American people, but I think it's something that we should keep an eye on and be a little bit more aware of.
Well, I hope we're okay. All right, guys, we're out of time for this segment, so we're going to move on. And Brett, Andrew, Ethan, thank you very much. Don't go away. We'll be coming back shortly to present the COS Perspective segment, which will be coming up very shortly. So don't go away, guys. Thank you very much. All right, Ken. Good segment again. Good segment. A lot of interesting things everybody's got on their mind. Well, speaking of things on our mind, our friend John Aukerman, as usual, has gotten on his soapbox again and is ready to present us something. And I think the title of this is the Continental U.S., I believe, is what he's talking about here. So let's bring John on and listen to what he's got to say.
John Aukerman for Convention of States. For the American patriots to name their political body the Continental Congress was a remarkably audacious choice. In 1774, the 13 colonies represented a narrow band of settlements along the eastern seaboard of North America. Beyond them stretched an enormous, unexplored wilderness. The colonists assumed that they were living on a vast continent, but they had a very limited understanding of its true size, geography, and resources. Yet they gave their revolutionary assembly a name that suggested authority over an entire continent. Compare that to the island nation of Great Britain, to whom they were subject. The irony becomes even greater when you remember how little of North America was actually under the control of the 13 colonies. To the west of them lay immense territories inhabited by Native American nations and claimed in various ways by European powers. The Appalachian Mountains were a formidable barrier to westward expansion, and the lands beyond them were just plain unknown. The Pacific coast was thousands of miles away, and the vast interior of the continent had not been mapped or explored in any way. In practical terms, the Continental Congress represented 13 British colonies occupying only a fraction of the landmass they were claiming to speak for. Still, the name reveals something important about the Patriots' vision, and perhaps their audacity. They were not merely organizing 13 isolated colonies. They were asserting that their political cause represented something larger and more consequential. By calling themselves the Continental Congress, they implicitly projected an authority and a national identity that did not yet exist. They could not possibly have known the ultimate size, geography, or future boundaries of the United States, yet they chose a name that anticipated a continental nation. In hindsight, the name sounds almost prophetic. Small collection of colonies on the Atlantic coast boldly adopted a title that eventually would become appropriate for a nation stretching from sea to shining sea.
Now, did that video come through okay from your end, Ken?
It did on my end, Dale. Yes, it did.
Oh boy, it didn't look good on my end.
I think we'll have to check with our guests when they come back. They can give us
I
thumbs up.
hope I hope our viewers are seeing everything okay. That's the important thing. So we'll see.
The guys in the green room, if you could give us a thumbs up if everything sounds good there to you, we can get an idea.
Yeah,
Thumbs up there.
got some thumbs up here. All right. Well, let's. Our next segment is the COS Perspective segment. This is a fairly new feature that we've started in the past few months, and we're going to do another one tonight. And tonight we're going to be talking about birth tourism, citizenship by design. And I guess, of course, it's been a hot topic here. So let's bring our guest back on and we'll get started on our COS Perspective segment. There's Brett Sturley and Andrew and Ethan. So you guys are the videos and so forth coming through from your end okay? They look okay to you?
Yes.
Yes, okay, all right, good. That's the most important thing. Well, guys, I appreciate you coming on and being willing to participate in this discussion tonight. So let's get started, and I'll open things up here, and we'll work our way to the first part, which Andrew will cover for us. But let's get started then. Tonight on the COS Perspective, we're taking up a subject that most Americans have probably heard about, but may not fully understand. That's birth tourism. The term generally refers to foreign nationals traveling to the United States for the purpose of giving birth here, with the child then acquiring U.S. citizenship. That immediately raises some difficult questions. Is this simply a consequence of America's longstanding understanding of birthright citizenship? Is it an exploitation of our immigration and citizenship laws? And even if we believe something should be done about it, who has the constitutional authority to act? That is why we've entitled tonight's discussion, Birth Tourism, Citizenship by Design. We're going to approach it the way we approach every COS perspective discussion. First with what is happening, then why it is happening, and then what does it mean? And then finally, I'll bring the discussion back to the COS perspective and the constitutional principles involved. Before we can decide what we think about birth tourism, we need to understand what it actually is. This is where I want us to begin with facts rather than conclusions. What constitutes birth tourism? How does it work? Are there businesses that actually help arrange it? What happens legally when a child is born here to foreign parents? And what has our government already done to discourage or prevent the practice? So let's begin with the basic question, what is happening? Andrew, why don't you take that away for us?
Yeah, so I think you articulated it very well at the very beginning. Essentially, to put it in a nutshell, it's when immigrants come over to the United States and they plan to have a pregnancy here in the United States. Now, it's different than just coming over to the United States for tourism and then you happen to just give birth, right? That's something totally different, and the federal government recognizes that. And so in either case, though, if a child is born, whether it was planned or unplanned, and I mean planned to give birth in the United States, not necessarily was the pregnancy planned, but if you planned it to come to the United States and give birth, or with the intention of taking advantage of our system to then get citizenship for your child, and then to get some type of benefit for your child because they are U.S. citizen, or if it was just an accident, you just happen to be touring in the United States and you happen to have your child here. In both cases, the child would be protected under the 14th Amendment, and that child would be a U.S. citizen. And so then, if the family decides to go back home and go to their country of origin with their child, that child can stay there for X amount of years, and then when the child's 18, can come back to the United States and have the privilege of being a U.S. citizen. Now, but the focus on this, I think, is going to be more on the idea of people coming here with the intention, with the plan of having a child on U.S. soil so that they can get the benefit of being a U.S. citizen. Now, there are a lot of organizations that have developed in the past that have been created specifically to facilitate birth tourism. There were two organizations that I want to bring to your attention. You Win USA and USA Happy Baby. These are two actual organizations that were created with the intention to help facilitate birth tourism, and they would charge families between $30,000 and $100,000 to give assistance, to help them do with the visa paperwork if they're going to go the visa route. Because under B2 visas, you can come to the United States to get medical treatment or to do other things, as long as you can pay for the medical treatment, as long as you can pay for your stay, and you don't take advantage of the United States and our services, you can come and seek that medical treatment. So companies like Win USA and USA Happy Baby, they would help families to basically lie to the federal government to then come here and have a planned pregnancy on U.S. soil. So, of course, the United States has taken measures to crack down on this. Law enforcement agencies are aware of this, and there's been changes to regulations that prevent this from happening, or at least kind of crack down on it. Now, of course, the baby that was born in the United States is not the one that gets punished. It is always the parents that get punished. But we do see that there are thousands of children born every single year, anywhere from 5 to 10,000 to 30,000 children that are born in the United States using the birth tourism method. So that's
Andrew,
just kind of like
those two organizations you mentioned, are those United Nation organizations, or are those federal?
No, those were here in the United States. Those were
really.
Yeah, those are here. They are no longer operational. They were shut down in 2015. The federal government shut them down. Okay. Several of the people who were leading those organizations were indicted, and they did get they did get criminal time, or sorry, they did get jail time. But no, those organizations are no longer with us. Sorry, my camera just died.
Yeah, you went blank there on us.
So
We can hear you, but we can't see you now.
can still hear you, but that's fine.
You want to go ahead and wrap up? Go ahead and
Yeah. I'll go ahead and wrap up real quick. Sorry, I have a spare battery. I'll get in a second.
Okay.
But yeah, that essentially that's it in a nutshell. And what we see is we see a lot of immigrants in East Asia and Eastern Europe who are taking advantage of this. That's actually the bulk is coming from China, and it's almost always affluent people, not necessarily people who are impoverished or who are on the
Right.
lower end of the economic rung, or the economic ladder, I should say. So we almost always see it as affluent citizens in other nations that are trying to use birth tourism to take advantage of the United States.
And what was the number as to the number that has of children that have been born here like that?
It's annually anywhere from 10 to 30,000.
Annual. That's annual.
Annual,
Really?
10 to 30,000.
So these are kids that go back to their countries of origin and become of age, and then come back to the United States and run for office. Am I right? I mean,
Correct.
that can happen, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yes. So what happens is they become citizens. When they're born, they become citizens. And usually what will happen is the parents will just go back to their country of origin. They'll stay there until the child is of age, 18 years old, and the child will come back. And what you can do then is have chain migration, right? That once that child, or once that citizen hits 21 years old, he or she can petition the government to bring his family over through chain migration.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Good. Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to get my spare battery. I'll be right back.
Okay. We're gonna move on. Okay. So now we have a little better picture of the practice itself. We need to make sure and mute him, Ken. So I'll do that so we don't hear him.
Yep.
Okay. But knowing that birth tourism occurs doesn't answer the next question. Why would families travel thousands of miles and sometimes spend substantial amounts of money specifically so their child can be born in the United States? Well, to understand birth tourism, we have to understand the incentive behind it. Why American citizenship? American citizenship has enormous value. It carries constitutional protections, the right to live and work permanently in the United States, access to opportunities here, and a permanent connection to this country. For some foreign families, securing those opportunities for a child may be valuable enough to plan an American birth deliberately. And that takes us directly to the question, to our next question, and that is citizenship by design. When the purpose of the trip itself is to have a child born in the United States, the citizenship that follows isn't incidental, it's part of the plan. But here's another side to this. If American law provides citizenship to a child born here, are parents exploiting the law or simply arranging their affairs around a benefit our law provides? So let's examine, why is it happening? Brett, take it away.
Well, thank you, Dale. And I just want, as I'm speaking, I want everybody to think about something that Andrew said in the background, that a child can be born here in the United States, go back to a foreign country until they're 18, or maybe 35, or maybe 40, and come back and run for the presidency. Be president of the United States. How would that be to be trained, to be schooled and trained in China, our arch enemy on the global stage, and come back to the United States and actually be president of the United States? As far as I know, that's permitted under the SCOTUS decision, Trump versus Barber, that I'll get to here in a second. But just think about how damaging that is. And if that just sounds like it's really crazy, and that seems like an "are you serious" moment, just think about that we have right now in Congress. I mean, we have members of Congress with dual citizenships that have absolutely no intent of assimilating into the United States, and into American society, and just taking advantage of it. And so this is not a stretch. But so you ask the question, just like, why does somebody want to be a U.S. citizen to begin with? And I'd say the main thing is that they'll benefit from protection under the greatest governing document that's ever designed by man, which is the U.S. Constitution. And you name some of those rights, some of the unalienable rights, like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, private property rights, freedom of mobility. This is something that I think that we just don't really that we don't think about critically enough and appreciate enough, that we have the ability to move from community to community, state to state, and freely, without, because I remember, if you think back in the movie Hunt for Red October, whenever Sam Neill's asking Sean Connery's character, asking him, hey, you know what, I'd like to go to Montana, and then I could travel to here. And he said, I can do that without showing papers? And Sean Connery's like, yeah, no papers. I mean, that doesn't happen in other countries. And so I think that's a huge advantage here in the United States that we don't really think about as often as we should. Freedom of association, the right to vote, all those things are constitutionally guaranteed rights that a U.S. citizen has. Now, if you take this cynically, which, I hate to do that, but sometimes you have to take things cynically. You also have access to all sorts of government wealth transfer payments, subsidized health insurance coverage, subsidized loans, etc. So it's also easier for an American citizen, as Andrew pointed out, and you pointed out, Dale, that it's easier for an American citizen to bring family members who are citizens of foreign countries into the United States who are not subject to quotas. So that's the chain migration. Now, this is a chain migration back in the Immigration Act of 1965, I believe, where it was said, hey, well, wait a minute, isn't this going to just have like a free flow of family members just flooding into the country? And Ted Kennedy, one of the primary proponents of that, said, oh, no, that's never going to happen. Well, you know what? It's happened. So, long-term opportunities of parents, being, I mean, we like to think, I think that it's that we all want the best for our children, and we're looking to provide them the best opportunities. Not everybody is in that same frame of mind, though. Traditionally, American citizens have more access to jobs, and there's simply more economic activities in the United States than in any other country in the history of the world, not just currently, but in the history of the world. And it brings me back to a quote by Milton Friedman when he was asked about open borders. And up until President Trump came back into office in 2025 on January 20th, we had just an absolute wide open border where tens of millions of people had come through the previous 4 years. And Milton Friedman was quoted as saying something to the effect that a nation cannot have open borders and a welfare system, because they'll just come here to try to drain resources, because we are the richest nation in the world. And so I think that's exactly what's happened here now, and where this is, kind of the advent of these birth tourism companies have really flourished up until the last year or so. Now, it was interesting in my research for this that birth tourism that has actually existed since the 1940s and 1950s and 60s, back with the Korean War. It was actually developed to bring South Korean citizens into the United States and other members of the Pacific Rim. Now, where that differs from what we're doing here now, back in that period of time, that industry's clients, people coming from the Pacific Rim, were actually coming here to be productive members of U.S. society, and they were wanting to assimilate into American culture. And actually, for most of our immigration history, a new immigrant coming here and applying for citizenship in the United States needed to have a sponsor, needed to have a way of providing for themselves, making a living for themselves here, and actually had to swear under penalty of perjury that they would not accept any type of U.S. aid, any type of welfare payments. And I think that was for like 15 or 20 years time, I believe. So people had to come over here actually wanting to be productive members of U.S. society. Now that has changed over the last 20 years to where this industry has been dominated by Chinese interests, but also Russian, Turkey, Nigeria, and as we've seen, a very, very large Somali presence, and a presence of immigrants coming here from Muslim countries. And oddly enough, most of these immigrants coming here from Muslim countries are middle-aged men. So that's kind of that's at least curious, and I would probably say nefarious, actually, and that's totally intended. So this whole birth tourism industry has been commercialized. It's been subsidized by U.S. funded NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and these NGOs receive funding from the U.S. government, from the United Nations, of which the United States is the largest contributor to the United Nations in both in monetary, in any type of asset. And also, oddly enough, with Chamber of Commerce friendly businesses here in the United States, the interest here is that from the Chamber of Commerce side, and the Chamber of Commerce has come on record 20, 25 years ago saying that they support open borders, and they've never, to my knowledge that I've seen, never recanted that statement. The reason why would they want open borders? Well, what they want is their businesses, they benefit from paying for cheaper labor. And so when you have immigrants coming in from really poor countries, well, they tend to work for a lot less than what a U.S. citizen does or will, who has been raised up in an American society. So it benefits them. It increases profits for those businesses. And if you remember Doge, Elon Musk headed up Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. They shut down USAID, and the left screamed bloody murder. Well, USAID was the conduit for funding many of these NGOs and many of these non-governmental organizations that both facilitated the invasion, it's not immigration, the invasion across our southern border into our country from people who had absolutely no intent to assimilate into the United States society. They for the most part, they want to be here to remake U.S. society and take advantage of our prosperity. From the left, they want to change the demographics of the American electorate to where they can stay in power into perpetuity. And so we've seen this happen over in Europe. Spain is starting to Italy is starting to push back on some of this, as is Germany. They haven't gone quite as far down the road as like what Great Britain has. Great Britain is largely a lost country. They have committed national suicide by just allowing people who do not have Great Britain's best interests at heart into their country. At the end of the day, immigration policy the goal should be the betterment of the host country. And that's simply, since the multicultural revolution back in the 90s and 2000s. That's just simply not the goal of immigration policy here now. So you mentioned something here, and I'll try not to go as long as what I did in my first segment. Sorry about that. But you mentioned, what can we do? And the Trump administration, actually, one of his first executive orders was ending birthright citizenship. President Trump signed that on January 20th, 2025, the day he's inaugurated, that afternoon. And that never went into effect because it was litigated in courts, and it's been through various federal courts, the appellate court system, and finally ended up at the Supreme Court this year in the Trump versus Barbara case. And so what and that in the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, struck down President Trump's the Trump administration's executive order ending birthright citizenship, and actually having an historically accurate interpretation of the 14th Amendment and the Citizenship Clause, which is very, very simple. I want to read it. This first sentence. It's in Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, and it says, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside." That is very, very critical statement, and subject to the jurisdiction. That just doesn't mean that, oh, you know what, you need to follow the laws of the country. Because if I go to Germany, I'm an American citizen, I still have to abide by German laws, but I'm not protected by their constitution, by their government charter, because I'm not a citizen. I'm not afforded those rights and those privileges because I'm not a German citizen. And so what Chief Justice John Roberts, as he is wont to do, rewrites history, rewrites statutes, now rewrote the Constitution to say, no, what this says is any person born on U.S. soil is an American citizen, full stop. And he cited British common law and all this stuff that has it has some historical significance in how our laws were formed, but has absolutely there is no continuity, there is no application of British common law post our Constitution. That's what we kind of declared independence from Great Britain to escape the British legal system. Yeah. And so Chief Justice Roberts is basically, again, has given his imprimatur to a full scale and allowing a full scale invasion of the United States. And, I think that, this is something you might talk about a little bit earlier or a little bit later in the show when we relate this back to Article 5 and Convention of States. That's why states need to have the ability to override judicial decisions that are clearly, blatantly unconstitutional, do not comport with any of the original intent of the Constitution or that law.
Can we say then that right now that birth tourism is an exploitation of American law, or just abiding by the current rules? I mean, is that which is it? Are they right now?
It's an allowed sanctioned exploitation of our history, of the original intent of the 14th Amendment, of the Citizenship Clause. This goes against, you can look up Senator Jacob Howard. He was the author of the Citizenship Clause in the 14th Amendment, and you can look at his floor speech and where he was given testimony when they were debating this, going through committees.
Yeah.
And he was specifically asked this. He said, does this mean that anybody born on U.S. soil is an American citizen? And he said, absolutely not. And he cited ambassadors. An ambassador from Estonia comes over here, and his wife has a baby at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. That baby is an Estonian citizen. It is not a U.S. citizen. And so that subject to the jurisdiction, that's a specific term of art that says you have to owe allegiance to the United States. And clearly, a baby who was born on American soil of foreign nationals does not have allegiance to the United States, just the same as their parents don't have allegiance to the United States either. So that is the test historically, and something that the SCOTUS completely botched.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. Thank you, Brett. Ken, any questions or comments from the viewers as we go along here? Anything that we need to address or?
Not in particular.
Not yet?
There's been a couple of conversations about, about the fact that that there's a debate of conflicts with oath of office and other things that come into play. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's move on then. Okay. Well, we can disagree with the motives of the parents. Okay. We can all object to businesses that profit from the practice. We can strengthen visa enforcement. But eventually we reach a much more difficult question. What does all this mean for citizenship itself and for the Constitution? Citizenship, the Constitution, and government authority. This is where birth tourism becomes much more than an immigration issue. The 14th Amendment says that persons born, just as Brett just recited for us, says that persons born are naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction are citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside. For generations, that language has generally been understood to provide citizenship to almost everyone born on American soil. Birth tourism tests the edges of that principle because the parents may have deliberately arranged the American birth for the purpose of obtaining citizenship for their child. So we have to separate two questions. The first is, can the United States prevent someone from entering the country when the primary purpose is birth tourism? The second is a much larger question. Once a child has been born here, can government deny that child citizenship because of the parents' immigration status or their reason for coming? Those are not the same constitutional questions. And that leads us to another question that is especially important for Convention of States. Who gets to decide? The President, Congress, the federal courts, ultimately the Supreme Court. So let's now examine, what does this mean? So Ethan, take it away.
Perfect. Well, I think I'll begin with some terminology that was mentioned or brought up earlier. Before I do that, I will preface this with the fact that there is an article coming out tomorrow on Emergency Docket on birth tourism by our contributor Preston Hill. He goes to UNC, I think UNC Chapel Hill. I hope that's right. And he's a really good, smart guy. I've read the article, previewed it, and I didn't reread it for this because I don't want to parrot his talking points. But I would encourage everyone to go read that separately from what I'm going to say, because he's certainly studied it more than I have. However, I've read both of the executive orders that sort of prompted this conversation, the second birthright citizenship order and the birth tourism order. And the first question is a very easy one. Can the United States government stop someone from coming in the country because of their visa status? Well, really the question is, can the United States government stop someone from coming in the country? Full stop. The answer is yes. That's basic immigration policy. Yes, Congress can do it. Quite obviously, they have an inherent power to regulate immigration. It's just part of being a nation. It's part of being a people, and you have borders. If you don't have borders, you don't have a nation. That's just not what you are. It's a matter of identity. And Congress can do it. The president also has some inherent foreign policy powers and inherent constitutional authority over immigration. So the question is not whether this can be done via the visa system. It's whether it can be done when it comes to birthright citizenship. And I think from this point forward, I'm going to use some terms that I'm going to define with some level of specificity. So birthright citizenship, those two words as a term don't appear in the Constitution anywhere. Instead, what Justice Alito writes in his dissent in Barbara is that birthright citizenship is not actually citizenship at all. To be a citizen is kind of the whole ballgame. Citizenship is what this debate about birth tourism is all about. Because in a republic, you have citizens. In a monarchy, as like the one that we revolted against, you have subjecthood. And of course, in that instance, the subjecthood is determined by your birth. It doesn't matter whether you're subject to the jurisdiction of the laws or not. You are in the province of the king. You're automatically within his jurisdiction. You are a subject of the king, and therefore birth, citizenship, quote unquote, by birth, subjecthood by birth is the standard. In a constitutional republic, expect that to be quite different. And indeed, in ancient times in Rome and dating back to other republics that we see throughout history, the difference is quite apparent. You don't have citizenship, and you don't enjoy voting rights, and you don't enjoy all of the privileges and immunities of citizenship by your mere birth on the magic soil. And I think one of the terms that I'll also use instead of birthright citizenship, of course, I'm going to use birthright subjecthood. And another term I'll use is invader instead of immigrant, because immigration is a legal process that you follow to assimilate into a country and become part of the people. Invasion is what you do when you break the laws intentionally to get into a country and avoid assimilation, bring your own religion, your own language, your own culture, and own idea of the American ideal and of what the American dream is, and pervert it into something that is self-aggrandizing and does not benefit the common people, does not benefit we the people as a whole. And what we are seeing in America, I think, even as a legal term, is not immigration at the southern border, at least under Biden. Right now, there's really nothing going on at the southern border, but invasion. Because the difference here on legal, from a legal perspective, is interesting, because there is an exception under Wong Kim Ark, the precedent that the Supreme Court upheld in Trump v. Barbara, that carves out hostile enemies during a time of occupation as not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, and therefore their children do not get birthright citizenship or birthright subjecthood. And that there have been articles written by, I believe the Solicitor General of Iowa wrote one. There were other legal scholars who have written articles about this concept that many of the people crossing the southern border and invading the country are not doing it in the way that, of course, wasn't originally intended or originally understood to be the immigration policy of the United States at the time of the ratification of the amendment, but are instead involved in a sort of hostile occupation of the United States, even though they don't control the sovereignty, even though they aren't the sovereign, they aren't ruling, they aren't in the government en masse, they do have the intent necessary to be hostile occupiers of the United States. So there is something to be explored there. However, the birth tourism executive order does not use that as a category. Instead, it uses a couple areas that really are not that controversial. It uses diplomats as an exception, which is long been understood. It carves out American Samoa as an exception to birthright citizenship. It also targets specifically birth tourism fraud, basically bringing your child here explicitly for the reason of birth tourism, as we discussed earlier, the idea of a planned pregnancy, as planned to have it on the United States soil to enjoy birthright subjecthood or birthright citizenship. And the ultimate question here is, do we think that citizenship is higher as a concept than the written text of the law or even the common law? Because the written text of the law does say subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And as Justice Thomas explains in his 90-page dissent, there is an allegiance component to that. And of course, Justice Alito goes into what he calls the preciousness of citizenship. He calls his American citizenship precious. I think that's what this whole debate is really all about. If you're going to have a country, you have to have a standard for your citizens. If you're going to operate a republic, you have to have citizenship. And it can't be subjecthood. It cannot be the same exact thing that you brought from the British monarchy. You can't just apply that to a large continental republic and expect it to work, especially in modern day America. And Justice Alito has a good passage in his opinion that is directly counter to the opinion of course, the Chief Justice. And I think it illustrates the point rather nicely as the so-called originalists of Justice Roberts go back and forth with Justice Thomas and Justice Alito. Alito says, quote, "For these reasons, the original meaning of the 14th Amendment does not require inhumane results, and we should not adopt an erroneous interpretation of the 14th Amendment simply out of fear for the consequences of rocking the boat or as a reaction to current immigration policy." And I think that approach, that we should not be afraid to rock the boat. Yes, Wong Kim Ark has been on the books for 150 years, but this particular question has never really been before the court. And the court did make perhaps a mistake. They took up the constitutional question first off, rather than the statutory question. That's an obvious mistake by the court. And Justice Kavanaugh wrote an opinion separately, deciding on the statutory question instead of the constitutional question, which was the correct approach, no matter what your opinion is of birthright citizenship. But when it comes to birth tourism, these executive orders are going to go back before the court, and they're going to have to decide the constitutionality of the birth tourism orders in addition to deciding Trump v. Barbara. It's all about the same thing. In a republic, can you have a standard for citizenship that is indistinguishable from that of the British monarchy, that of a monarchy in general? And I think the obvious answer is no, you just can't. It's not functional.
Ethan, a couple things that you said that I want to follow up on that I think are very important. Am I correct that you're saying that the government can restrict birth tourism without changing the traditional understanding of birthright citizenship? Am I right? I think you were referring to invasion. Invaders.
Well, that is not included in the current executive order. That is something that they could explore in the future. There is an act, a bill in Congress to do exactly that, pass it as a law. Of course, Congress doesn't really pass laws these days anymore, so that's not really going to go anywhere. But it is a suggestion, it is an exploration of the idea that, yes, there is historically, even under the common law, an exception to birthright citizenship for hostile occupiers or hostile enemies in times of an occupation. And the occupation part is debatable, but the hostile enemies is really indistinguishable from invaders at a certain level. So if you understand that these migrants, these illegal aliens are invaders, that they're enemies, that they have intentions contrary to the law and the tradition regarding birthright citizenship, then...
Well, isn't that what Kavanaugh was kind of referring to?
He was referring to the statute. He said that birthright citizenship was established by statute or via statute by Congress, and that Congress could change the law at any time. That is separate from the interpretation of subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The hostile enemies exception is directly tied to the court's interpretation of subject to the jurisdiction thereof in Wong Kim Ark. Kavanaugh was saying you can change actually a wide variety of different things, place any amount of restrictions on birthright citizenship, basically via statute. And he authored a solo opinion that was not joined by any other justice, so that's probably not worth exploring, just because it won't be upheld at the court. You have only one justice to support it. But the hostile enemies exception, it's iffy. It's not a guarantee. I don't believe it's very possible that the Supreme Court would not uphold it depending on how Trump used it. And of course, we're coming down to the wire of the Trump presidency, coming down to the last 2 years, year and a half. It might not be worth exploring, but it's something that some people have written about. And when compared to the other options, diplomats and Native Americans, it's pretty much the only option available to the Trump administration.
Something else you said. I'm sorry to cut you off. Something else you said that I thought was interesting, and I think you were alluding to the concept of citizenship. That's not the same thing as just being born in the United States. Because I'm going to touch on that when I get into the COS perspective. Being a citizen in our country should mean more than just being born here. Is that correct? Am I saying that right?
Well, there's no question that it certainly should mean that. Of course, the legal question is debatable, and I'm not going to pretend that subject to the jurisdiction thereof is like expressly clear language. That's what the opponents of the Trump executive orders would like to say. They say, "Oh, it's such a clear and obvious issue. You're born here and you're automatically a citizen." No, actually, this is kind of complicated language, and you have to go back and try to understand the original public meaning of it. But whether, as a policy question, whether people should be born here and automatically become citizens, that's just no way to run a country. There's no way to do that effectively in our modern times, where travel is so easy. You can cross the border under the Biden administration. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head of just how many crossed every single day, flooding the country. And if you walk into the country over that border and you have a baby there, that kid's now a citizen, and they can go back to China or to Iran or wherever and grow the next 40 years, come back here and run for president. That's just no way to run a country. That's not how the Constitution just doesn't survive under that scenario.
All right. Ethan, thank you very, very much. Okay, I'm going to move on now and wrap it up here with the COS perspective. I hope so. I'm going to try and bring in my no, that's not what I want to do here. I want to share my screen here. Okay. All right. Well, we've talked about what is happening, why it is happening, and what it may mean. Now let's take everything we've heard and look at birth tourism through the principles of Convention of States. On the screen are our resolution pillars and our core values of our Convention of States organization. That's what comprises the Convention of States perspective, the pillars and the core values. We've highlighted here those that I believe have a particular relevance to this issue. So let's take them one at a time. And let's begin with the national debt. Now, we haven't talked about this so far, but I think it's very interesting. And I'm not suggesting that birth tourism itself is a major cause of our national debt. That would overstate the case. But citizenship and immigration policies have fiscal consequences. Decisions made today can create obligations and costs extending years into the future. One of the principles behind our concern over the national debt is that government must consider the long-term consequences of the policies it adopts. Birth tourism gives us another reason to ask whether our citizenship and immigration policies are producing consequences that Congress and the American people fully intend. The second pillar we've highlighted is curtailing the breadth and control of the federal government. This one goes directly to the heart of our discussion. We may decide that birth tourism is a problem, but identifying a problem doesn't automatically give the federal government unlimited authority to solve it. Immigration is largely administered by the federal government. Congress writes immigration laws. The executive branch enforces them, and the courts determine whether government actions comply with the Constitution. The COS principle is straightforward. Government power must have constitutional boundaries, even when we agree with the objective government is trying to accomplish. That's an important distinction. We shouldn't measure federal power by whether we happen to like a particular president's policy. We should measure it against the Constitution. Now let's look at some core values we've highlighted. First, empowering purpose-driven people. Issues such as birth tourism demonstrate why informed and engaged citizens matter. this is the topic I was trying to point out about the citizenship thing. Citizenship policy shouldn't simply be something decided in Washington while the American people remain spectators. We have a responsibility to understand the issue, understand the Constitution, and question our elected officials and participate in determining the direction of our country. Self-government requires citizens willing to do exactly that. Next is the culture of self-governance. I think this has a particular interesting connection to birth tourism. What does American citizenship actually mean? Is citizenship simply a legal status that provides certain rights and benefits? Or does citizenship also carry responsibilities to participate, to understand our system of government, and to help preserve the constitutional republic we've inherited? Birth tourism forces us to think about citizenship itself. In a self-governing republic, citizenship is more than something government gives us. Citizenship is participation in self-government. Our next core value is act, learn, and adjust. Government policies sometimes produce consequences that weren't anticipated when those policies were adopted. And sometimes people discover ways to use or exploit rules in ways policymakers never envisioned. When that happens, we shouldn't simply ignore it. We act, we examine the results, we learn from experience, and when necessary, we adjust. If our visa system is being deliberately used for birth tourism, then government should examine whether existing enforcement and policies are adequate. But, and this is very important, adjusting policy doesn't mean ignoring constitutional limits. We can correct a problem without abandoning the principles that govern how we correct it. Finally, constitutional originalism. The 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Those words matter, but so does the question. What did these words mean when the 14th Amendment was adopted? What did the framers and ratifiers understand subject to the jurisdiction thereof to mean? Did they intend citizenship to extend to virtually everyone born on American soil? Or are there circumstances in which birth within the United States alone is not sufficient? Those are constitutional questions, not simply immigration policy questions. And constitutional originalism asks us to seek the meaning of the Constitution from its text, structure, and original public meaning, rather than changing its meaning simply to achieve the policy result we prefer. Whether that original understanding ultimately supports or challenges today's interpretation of birthright citizenship is something serious constitutional scholars continue to debate. But the principle remains: we start with the Constitution, we don't start with the result we want and then make the Constitution fit it. So when we put these highlighted pillars and core values together, I think birth tourism becomes much more than an immigration story. National debt reminds us to consider the long-term consequences. Curtailing the breadth and control of the federal government reminds us solving a problem doesn't justify unlimited federal power. Empowering purpose-driven people reminds us that citizens have a responsibility to understand and participate in these debates. Culture of self-governance asks us to consider what citizenship means in a constitutional republic. Act, Learn, and Adjust tells us to recognize problems and improve policies when experience shows that we aren't working as intended. Constitutional originalism brings us back to the document that ultimately governs all of it, the United States Constitution. So after everything we've discussed tonight, perhaps the question isn't simply Do we support or oppose birth tourism? The deeper questions are, what does American citizenship mean? What does the Constitution actually say? And how do we address a legitimate public policy concern while remaining faithful to the constitutional principles that define our republic? That is the COS perspective. So, in closing here, then, birth tourism forces us to think about immigration, citizenship, and the meaning of the 14th Amendment. But it also reminds us of something even more fundamental. In our constitutional republic, good intentions are not enough. How government acts and whether it stays within its constitutional authority matters just as much as what government is trying to accomplish. So I want to thank the panelists for examining all their issues and their parts. And I want to say thank you very much for everyone for listening to our COS perspective this evening. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Any final comments from anyone?
You know, Dale.
No, thank you for having me on. This was a great discussion, and
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I hope to be on soon.
Go ahead, Ethan. Go ahead.
He said what he had to say.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want, you know, I basically was able to be mainly an observer tonight of that, of everything, and I think all the presentations were great. I don't really understand, you know, how we can get so hung up on some of the areas that we do. When you look at simple words like assimilation, when you look at the reason people want to come here versus the reason people take advantage of coming here, I think it becomes clear. And we've heard the argument that we need to, that our immigration system is broken and we need to fix it, and yet nothing's being done to address our immigration system. Again, I don't know. I don't really know the problem there. Is it that it takes too long? Is it too difficult? I don't think if we go back and look at the millions of stories of a lot of our own ancestors who came here, would argue that they wanted to come here, that they wanted to become Americans for the reason of the opportunity, and the fact that they would go through such lengths to do that. Only served as the real reason as to why so many immigrants and this, I'm sure we won't come up with examples, but why immigrants came and built businesses and built successes, because they wanted to be here and they wanted to assimilate into what we had. And I'm afraid what we see today is the fact that the division is we've got people that come from these places that have, virtually kings and terrible situations, and they come here and want to bring that with them. And I just don't understand that. And I guess my point is, if we're going to try and fix the immigration system, why don't we fix it and adhere to it, and stop arguing over the fact that that you drop a baby here and he goes here and goes there and comes back, and I think we have to also address the fact that who we can actually elect into our government system. I think there has to be some stricter involvement there, because we're seeing infiltration basically by people who just want to destroy America. That's my piece, just from listening to everything. I think everybody did a great job, but I think there's more to this than just looking at definitions, and we really do need to fix the system if that's the case.
Hey, Ken, can I just offer one little tidbit on that last little thing you said about people want to come here to destroy our nation?
Yes.
Hassan Piker, he is a prime example of that. He's actually a product of birth tourism. And so that's why I picked him, because it related to the COS perspective.
Yeah.
And he's a Turkish American. His parents came to the United States. They had their son Hassan here in the United States. They went back to Turkey, and he stayed there for most of his life. And then he's come over here. He's taken advantage of our system, and he is actively working to tear it down. You know, he's not doing it from a government perspective. He's doing it from an influence perspective as a very successful influencer on social media. You know, he has all of the boxes. He's a very good looking guy, built. He's got that kind of that macho man guy, very well spoken, but he has dark ideas behind him, and he's just parrots evil stuff and things that are just, you know, and antithetical to our founding and to the United States and to good Christian values. So, and not just Christian values, American values.
Yeah, I think that's
Exactly.
an excellent example. Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my response to that too, Andrew, is if that's the case, why is there not a when you want to apply and get part of that, and you come into the immigration portion of that, why isn't there a screening process that everyone has to go through to figure that out? And there should be. I mean, I'm as compassionate as everybody else who wanting to allow people to come in, but I think it was brought up in a number of cases tonight. Financially, a country cannot afford it unless you're controlling the numbers that come in, and the only way to control the numbers that want to come in are those that actually bring something with them to contribute to the society, American society. And we're not seeing that today. So I guess that's what I'm asking. How do you fix that? How do we get that immigration policy or that immigration procedure to be fixed to that point? That has to be. I think that should be put in place first before we get into this argument over, everything that we're seeing being thrown at us tonight. We had a viewer comment. I just want to throw this up quick. This is not just about Islam, but Islam obviously pertains to the communism you're talking about, Andrew. I'm just going to throw this up too. This was David who mentioned that the president, and again, I'm not sure whether this is the president should decide whom the enemy invader is, but if you look at the Minnesota problem we had, he's talking about, to a large degree, the people that come across that do want to assimilate, but then you have these comprehensive agendas to change America, and that is not with a portion of Islam. And that's where I would a little bit disagree with David there. There's a portion of Islam that does not want to assimilate. There are some Muslims here that do. So, that I think, again, it gets back to that process of we need to fix that immigration system and get it so that we can distinguish some of that.
We had a little talk about something about this in I'm president of the Greene County chapter of Missouri Republican Assemblies. So in our August meeting, we had a little discussion about this and was talking about Islam. And I was saying, that there are Muslims who do want to assimilate and do want to function in the United States society. And we had one of our members took exception to that. And as I started kind of going down that path, I asked her name's Miriam. Her last name is Muhammad Khani. She is an Iranian citizen. She was an Iranian citizen who her parents got her out of Iran. And so I said, I think I want to defer to Miriam because she's probably the subject matter expert on this instead of me. And she said that I think you're trying to be too kind. There are, if you have any Muslim that abides by the teaching of the Quran, they are an invader. They have absolutely no inclination. They have no interest in assimilating into United States society. They do practice Sharia law, which is diametrically opposed to the U.S. Constitution. And she said that her words, and she's converted. She's a Christian now. She said that any Muslim that follows the Quran is an imminent danger to the United States society. I'm like, oh. Well, there you have it. I said I wasn't trying to sugarcoat it or anything like that, or trying to be nice, because, and it's interesting. It's interesting also that there's only one major world religion that has never gone through Reformation, and that's Islam. Never has. So this is it is a 5th century religion, and the reason, I think the reason why that it is being allowed, and like I said, if we continue to go down this path, this will be absolutely the most ignorant national suicide ever committed by any nation. And the reason is, I think, my opinion, but I think it's based upon observation and evidence, that it is the philosophy of the left, not liberals, but of the left, that human beings can be perfected if the right amount of government is exerted upon them. And I think conservatives believe that, for the most part, that we're all fallen human beings, we're all imperfect, we're all in need of repentance, and we're all in need of totally undeserving of the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. The left, and I pointed this out back in the Biden administration. I'm like, do you think that the Democrat Party would be in favor of open borders if 80% of those people coming over the border voted Republican? There's no chance.
Mm-hmm.
There's no chance.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think the left sees, in my opinion, and again, kind of bears out by evidence and observation, is that they want to remake. They fundamentally do not believe that the United States is a just country. We were not found upon, righteous principles, and it is their intent to remake America in their own utopian image. And a way to do that is that you completely change the electorate, and you completely go and you tear everything down. When you get a society, when a society breaks down, then people will sit there and they'll look, okay, where can we go? What can provide for us? Well, now, since they have gone through a 50, 60, 70-year march of separating us from our religion, from our faith, well, the thing that fills that vacuum is government. And so they see this as a way to get total control. Now, the thing that is very, very short-sighted, that they don't understand, is that this has been done before in the past, and the first people that say, like, the Muslim invaders go after are people like us. We're people who believe in our founding principles, and we are patriots. Well, the second people they go after are the people who enabled them to come into power to begin with, which is the left. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, you guys don't have the immunity idol from on the island. They're going to kill you just the same, except just a little bit later than what they kill us, if they're allowed to do this. And so I 100% believe this is an existential threat. It's it's one that the Republican Party has been wholly inadequate in addressing and unwilling to address. And I am very optimistic that we can pull out of this, but we're in a bit of a pickle right now. And I think that there's definitely I think there are demonic forces at work in our society right now. And I think that what that biblical verse is, hell is empty for all the demons are here, I think that's extremely applicable here right now. So
All right.
that's my joyous message to sleep on here.
What
tonight.
a
So,
joyful note. Do it a joyful note to end this conversation. Yes. We've gone way over time on this. Anyone else have any quick comment before we close this out? Okay.
No, I just want to say thank you for having me on. I'm going to run here. There is a birth tourism article coming out tomorrow, an emergency docket. So if anyone would like to check that out, I would encourage you to do so. And this was a great discussion. Thank you for having me on.
I bookmarked it.
All right. Thank you, Ethan. Andrew, thank you. Brett, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
It's a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right, Ken. We're way over
Well,
time.
You picked another good topic, Dale. I'll blame it on you. We go over time. You pick a good topic.
Oh, I think, believe me, the one I'm cooking up for September is going to be a good one too. Anyway, Gary had some comments that he wants to make on the national debt. I think let's hold that to next week, and let's look at Dave's daily dose that we normally do every week, and then we'll close things out. Okay?
We'll get to you next week, Gary.
Yeah.
National Basketball Association. And for
Well, that didn't load at all. So
Let me see.
candidate Royce White wants to play for a women's team
there we
in
go.
the WNBA. Sounds pretty ridiculous, doesn't it? Here's White's reasoning. I sometimes identify as a woman for the purpose of playing basketball. White took a look at the Women's National Basketball Association rules, and they say in Article 13, Section 1, that only players who are women are eligible to play. Okay, smarty pants, what's a woman? This is Dave's Daily Dose on BrooklynRoadRadio.com. I'm David Allen Punt. Well, the rules don't say exactly. Players and coaches in the league say they welcome trans women, guys who decide to switch, not fight, and a trans woman WNBA player just retired in 2024. Lyshia Clarendon played for the WNBA for 12 years, averaged 7.6 points per game, 3.2 assists, and 2.7 rebounds. Not much. Royce could certainly beat that average. And he's not the only player that sees the human rights implications. WNBA players now average $600,000 a year, and a bunch of them make more than $1 million. Peanuts compared to the multi-millions that LeBron pulls down, but these are guys who are looking for work. Their playing days long behind them, and it sure beats working at the 7-Eleven for minimum wage. All because someone can't define what a woman happens to be. There are ways. Biological testing comes to mind. The WNBA board met earlier this week. They decided eventually to have another meeting. They're in a tough spot. They've made an arbitrary decision based on nothing but feelings and refused to make the hard choice. And forming a trans league would allow ex-NBA players, male players, to dominate another league. Years ago, an Iowa local chamber of commerce decided to rejuvenate the 1940s festival called the Sioux City Sioux Contest. The only qualifications listed in the entry form was red hair and blue eyes, like the song made famous by Gene Autry. My hair was red then, and I considered entering the contest because just like Royce White and the WNBA, nothing was said about verifiable gender. When the chamber had lunch at the station, half of the group wanted me to enter. The other half thought it would be a disgrace. So to keep the peace, I dropped out. Sad to say. The winner got a trip to LA and a screen test. Who knows how life would have turned out? And who knows which team will knuckle under and give Royce White and Enes Kanter Freedom a shot at beating up all those little girls while making a lot of money. And perhaps men and women's sports eventually will go the way of all other bad ideas. I'm David Allen Pott.
I tell you, even this thing's WNBA is on David's mind. I tell you.
Yeah. Well, again, I think a number of people mentioned, you know, it's another "Are you serious?" topic
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Do you know when this next meeting is supposed to occur?
I don't. I know they are supposed to meet, but I don't know the date.
I don't either.
Yeah.
All right.
They're
Okay.
not going to change. They're not going to change, Dave. They're not
You
gonna
don't think so?
change. No.
I don't know. I think they're going to have to. I think they're going to have to. I mean, I think they're going to.
I didn't realize.
to have.
That,
Huh?
I was going to say, I didn't realize that they've actually been in existence 12 years. Dave said 12 years.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were, I mean.
Oh, really?
I just started watching them this last year. You know.
Yeah. The only reason I pay any attention to him was of Caitlin Clark.
Oh yeah,
she's
coming to Indiana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got my attention. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Ken. Let's wrap up tonight. Been a good show, I think. Okay. If you want to find us on and watch our broadcast, the best way to find us is to go to our YouTube channel, American Patriots for Convention of States. And Ken, you're going to put the link up there for everyone, right?
Sure am. Yep.
But you can also just do a search on YouTube for American Patriots for Convention of States, and there you'll find our current broadcast as well as any past broadcasts. So once again, American Patriots for Convention of States. Now, as far as tonight's program, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop us an email at raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. So Ken, we'll let Maringo Mike close us out here. Any comments from our viewers or anything we need to show?
Nothing further.
Nothing further? Okay. All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed your night off. You didn't have to participate in that COS Perspective segment, so.
No, I kind of thought I'd take it all in and then just throw in my piece at the end. I didn't mean to kick off another whole segment, but
you got yourself involved in it anyway, didn't you?
yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's let Maringo Mike close us out here, and that'll be it for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We appreciate your support, and we'll be back again next Monday, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. So look forward to seeing you all at that time. So let's let Maringo Mike do his thing here.
Marengo Mike here with a reminder of the importance of this year as we continue to grow the grassroots army of volunteers and the mission of using the Constitution to fix the ills of our government. Use the QR code if you haven't signed the petition and consider using your talents to become an active volunteer. Thank you and God bless.